Hello and welcome to the Absolute Beginner Guitar Lesson Series. My name is Oliver and today's lesson is lesson number 13. And before I go any further, as always, I would like to invite anyone who is watching one of these lessons for the first time to go back and watch the previous lessons. The lesson series is designed so that each lesson builds upon the previous lesson, and I believe it will be at the very least helpful, if not necessary, for you to go back and watch the previous lessons. So before we get started, as always, I hope you have your guitar out, tuned up to standard pitch, and I also hope you have a notebook or a binder, or at the very least a piece of paper and something to write on in case you want to take some notes, along with any study material that you may have previously written down in previous lessons. So if assuming that we're all set with those things, I guess we can get into the lesson. So the subject of today's lesson is root note E string minor chord fingerings. And of course that sounds like a mouthful, but as we get into this, I think you're going to understand where I'm coming from. So what we want to do here is we want to lay out some parameters of what we're going to be doing, some basic parameters. And the first parameter is that we are only going to be using the first three strings of the guitar. So that is the E string, the B string, and the G string. So we're only going to be using the first three strings of the guitar. And also, all of the root notes of these minor chords will be found on the E string. And also, the root notes of these minor chords will all be notes that are found in the C major scale. Now, this is not to be confused with scale tone chords. This is not a set of chords used to be played in the key of C. We are merely using root notes that are in the C major scale because of our familiarity with those notes. We've been working with them. And today's lesson, oh, wait a second. One other thing. In our right hand, I want you to work with two basic patterns. The first pattern involves starting on the G string and just playing the G string, the B string, and the E string. And that's a 3-note pattern. The second pattern is a 4-note pattern, and it's just a variation of the first pattern. We play the first three strings in the first pattern, that is the G, the B string, and the E string. And then we return to the B string. So it makes our pattern a 4-note pattern. And what I want you to do is I want you to practice playing these chords using both the 3-note and the 4-note pattern. And when you get comfortable, I want you to try to see if you can find ways to combine the 3-note and the 4-note patterns together in a way that's rhythmic. That way we can sort of start to build some variation in the things that we're practicing. Because what we've been doing in our right hand is been somewhat rudimentary, and we want to slowly build upon that. So I believe we've set all the parameters here. I guess we can get into it. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the E minor chord. And because our root note is the open E note, we have an open string fingering or voicing. Now, the beautiful thing about this chord is you're probably not going to find an easier chord to play. We're simply going to play the open E, and then on the G string, we're going to play the open G, and on the B string, we're going to play the open B. So all together, we have open G, open B, and open E. This is our E minor chord. And of course, it's an open string voicing, and it's going to be unique to the minor chord where we have the open E string as the root note. Now, before we go any further, I want to analyze the relationship of the notes to each other. And here the analysis is very simple. If we start with our root note, we have the open E string. It's open. And then if we look to what we're playing on the B string, we have the open B string. And when we look to what we're playing on the G string, we have the open G string. So we have all three strings being played open. They are at the same position, or as can be said, at the same fret. So now, keeping that in mind, let's move on. The next chord we want to play is going to be F minor. So the first thing we need to do is we need to locate our root note F. And we can locate that at the first fret on the E string. And we're going to play with our index finger here. So we have the F note. However, if you think back to what we just discussed, we have sort of established that for this minor chord fingering, the notes that we're going to be playing on all three strings are going to be at the same fret. So if our root is at the first fret, the note we need to play on the B string is at the first fret, and the note we need to play on the G string is at the first fret. So now what we want to do is we want to bar across all three strings. Now I introduced the concept of a bar in the last lesson, and it's essentially where we use one finger to play notes on more than one string. And for our major chord fingering, we used a bar across the E and the B strings. What we're going to do here is we're going to bar across all three strings. So what we have is we're playing at the first fret on the G string, the first fret on the B string, and the first fret on the E string. And now we have F minor. And this is a closed fingering, and therefore it is movable. So we really only have two fingerings that we're going to use for these minor chords. And if we back it up, we start with the E minor chord, where we're just going to play the G, B, and E strings all open. The next chord we played was the F minor chord, and we established that we need to bar across all three strings. So we located our root note at the first fret of the E string, and then we barred across the G and the B strings. So we have F minor. So this is a movable form, and it may provide some difficulty for you at first. Now we're barring across three strings, so we have to figure out how to place our finger so that we can get a good sound out of each string. And in reality, you may struggle to get a good sound consistently out of each string, but that's okay. The important thing is that we try to place our fingers where they need to be, and we try to focus and attempt to get a good sound. So we're at the F minor chord. The next chord we want to play is the G minor chord. And all we really have to do is simply move this fingering, which is essentially one finger barred across three strings, such that the root note G is underneath our index finger on the E string. So we're at F at the first fret. We need to move up 2 frets to the G, and now we have the G minor chord. Our next minor chord we want to look at is the A minor chord. Well, our root note is at G on the 3rd fret of the E string. So we need to move up 2 frets to find the A on the 5th fret of the E string. And now we have A minor. So our next chord that we want to play is B minor. We're at A minor with our root note at the 5th fret on the E string. So what we want to do is we want to move up a whole step or 2 frets from A to B at the 7th fret on the E string, apply our bar, and we have our B minor chord. So our next chord is going to be C minor. Well, we're at B minor with our root note at the 7th fret on the E string. So we need to move up from the B at the 7th fret on the E string to the C at the 8th fret and apply our bar across the 3 strings, and we have C minor. So the next chord we want is D minor, and we're currently at C minor with our root note on the C at the 8th fret of the E string. So we need to move up from C to D, so that means we need to move up a whole step or 2 frets. So now we're going to move up so that our root note is on the 10th fret of the E string, and we're going to apply our bar across the 3 strings, and now we have D minor. And finally, we want to finish up with the E minor. We're at D minor where our root note is on the 10th fret of the E string. We need to move up to E, so that means we need to move up a whole step or 2 frets. So I'm going to move up from the 10th fret up to the 12th fret so that my root note is at the 12th fret E on the E string. And now we have our E minor chord. So that's the basic fundamental information. We have 2 chord fingerings. And to review, the E minor chord fingering is about as easy as we're going to get. We simply play the G, B, and E strings open. And that establishes the relationship between the 3 notes on the strings. They are all played at the same position. So we just need to maintain that relationship, and we will have a minor chord fingering with our root note on the E string. And when we went to the F minor chord, we established that we needed to bar across the G, B, and E strings. And we located our root note at the 1st fret on the E string, and then we applied our bar to get the F. And that established our movable chord fingering. And from there, all we really had to do was move this fingering to the various locations to find the root notes of the chords that we desire to play. So now that we have the basic information, we want to find ways to work with this information and turn this information into knowledge. And we need to employ the same strategies that I have advocated in previous lessons. And essentially to start with the open E minor chord and work our way up to the E minor chord at the 12th fret. And also to start at the E minor chord at the 12th fret and work our way down to the open E minor chord. So we want to be able to work that in both directions. And we want to be able to start at one end, go up to the other end, and then return to where we came from. And once we're comfortable doing that, then we want to just change our frame of reference and begin to challenge our mind to play the chords in different ways. So we can pick a random chord in the middle. We might pick A minor, for example. So now the challenge is to locate the root note A on the E string and then apply our minor chord fingering. And once we've established where we want to start, from there we can decide to either go up to another chord. It doesn't have to be the E. We can go up to another chord somewhere in between that A and the E, or we can work our way down to another chord. And the idea here is to familiarize yourself with starting in different locations and working in different directions. And this is how we will reinforce the information, and we will build the ability to sort of begin to recognize where we need to play these chords. So the idea is we want to be able to locate the root notes quickly and apply the proper fingering for the chord that we need to play. So that's basically the lesson. From here on in, it's just up to you to apply some work and take your time. And again, it may be frustrating for you if you go to finger a chord and you get a sound that's not good. Don't worry about it, because honestly, the mistakes don't matter. And you may have noticed in these lessons, I have made mistakes, and I've had notes that have come out not really sounding that good. And the reality is I could have edited that stuff out, but I wanted to just show that nobody's perfect, and not every note you play is going to be perfect. But that's okay, because we're in the process of learning, and what we're trying to do here is our focus is on knowledge, our knowledge of proper placement of our fingers, our knowledge of the proper strings that we need to play. And it's important to take our time and to sort of look to what we're playing in our left hand and make sure that we know what it is that we're going to be playing. And if we need to locate any fingers, to locate the fingers where they need to go and where we think we can get a good sound. And once we have that on our left hand, we want to look to our right hand, and we want to find that G note that we're going to start with, and just watch ourselves play through the 3-note pattern and the 4-note pattern. And it's also important to call out these chords as you play them, because it helps you to reinforce the information. So if you call out the E minor chord, you call out your E minor chord, E minor, open string. That's where our root note is. And then maybe if we have A minor, we call it out and we play A minor, 5th fret. And that's what we want to do. And sometimes people don't want to do that stuff because it seems a little corny to them. But the reality is this stuff works. So I don't want to ramble on. The next lesson is going to be the lesson where the culmination of these lessons centered around notes on the E string. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our major chord fingerings and our minor chord fingerings that we've learned, and we're going to combine them together and play the scale tone chords in the key of C major. So put in your time, put in your work, and I hope to see you there. Peace.